The story begins with a corpse lying on the ground, blood spreading across the stone beneath it. The area is silent, carrying the aftermath of violence. Soon after, a group of soldiers arrives at the scene. They move cautiously, advancing toward a temple located along a path that runs between two towering mountains. As they climb the stone steps leading upward, the destruction becomes increasingly apparent. Upon reaching the temple grounds, the devastation is undeniable. The buildings are ruined, and bodies are scattered across the area. One elderly monk among the group struggles to accept what he is seeing. The Manhwa sect, once known for its discipline and strength, has been reduced to a place of death. Another member of the group reacts with visible anger, convinced that only an inhuman force could have caused such destruction. Before any conclusion can be reached, attention shifts forward. Suddenly, movement appears among the corpses. From the rear of the battlefield, a single figure begins to walk forward. As he draws closer, his blood-soaked and heavily wounded face becomes visible, stunning the gathered leaders. They recognize him as the Plum Blossom Sword Saint. Without pause, a vast wave of red energy surges outward from him. The attack overwhelms the front lines instantly, crushing warriors and tearing through the battlefield without resistance. As the chaos spreads, a terrifying red aura rises, revealing the true origin of the massacre. From within the darkness, a hand emerges holding the severed head of Manhwa's leader. The representatives of the sects are left unable to react. A young warrior then steps fully into view, openly provoking the massive gathering. He reveals that his presence was driven by Manhwa's reputation as the strongest sect. Through effortless violence, he proves that reputation false. He throws the fallen leader's head toward the crowd, challenging them to attack together. Consumed by anger and humiliation, the remaining masters unleash a combined assault. Facing them, the warrior calmly accepts the challenge, finding the confrontation finally worth his attention. As the scene transitions smoothly, the perspective shifts to the real world. Dong Bong-soo is revealed sitting in his room, playing a newly released virtual reality game. Inside the game, he controls the sword master seen earlier, fighting countless enemies simultaneously. Even he finds it difficult to believe how many opponents he managed to defeat at once. It becomes clear that the entire massacre was part of the game's content. The game is notorious for its extreme violence, featuring relentless bloodshed and highly realistic depictions of injury and dismemberment. These elements make it especially appealing to Bong-soo. He recalls that the game has already drawn massive backlash and protest emails demanding its shutdown. Despite this, he believes there is nothing else quite like it. Still, he decides that in his next session, he might try playing more calmly. As the atmosphere settles, a television broadcast in his room switches to breaking news. The report announces that the CEO of Dado Industries, No, has gone missing. Bong-soo casually assumes that the man may already be dead and continues watching without concern. Moments later, strange noises echo from outside his room. Sensing something unusual, Bong-soo turns to investigate. Realizing what the sound suggests, he picks up a hammer stick kept nearby and moves into the adjacent room. Inside, a man is revealed, bound tightly and trembling in fear. The man is none other than CEO No, whom Bong-soo has secretly kidnapped and restrained. Bong-soo sets the hammer stick down and sits across from the restrained man, silently observing him. After a brief moment of thought, he moves closer and forces No to raise his head, demanding justification for his survival. Overcome by fear, No insists he has done nothing wrong and claims complete ignorance as to why he was captured. When Bong-soo releases him, No begins coughing violently. The scene shifts to fragments of No's past. He is shown abusing young women without cause, subjecting them to torture and brutal violence. Despite these actions, he continues to deny wrongdoing, repeatedly expressing confusion over his situation. Returning to the present, Bong-soo brings the hammer stick into view and makes it clear that someone truly innocent would never become the target of this kind of hunt. Panicking, No claims he will atone on his own and begs Bong-soo not to interfere. In response, Bong-soo violently pulls him forward by the hair and asserts that the punishment for No's actions must be delivered directly. He raises the hammer, preparing to strike. At that moment, No suddenly attacks, slamming his head into Bong-soo's stomach. The impact disrupts the strike and forces Bong-soo backward. In the same instant, a hidden power awakens within No, allowing him to snap the restraints binding his hands. Freed, he is overtaken by a twisted sense of joy and focuses solely on killing Bong-soo. He grabs the fallen hammer and advances with clear intent. Bong-soo reacts with brief surprise before calmly smiling. He avoids the incoming attack effortlessly and counters with a single punch to No's stomach. The blow overwhelms him completely. As No attempts to stand, Bong-soo delivers a precise kick to his leg, sending him crashing to the floor in far worse condition than before. Desperate, No crawls across the floor and notices a glowing gate ahead. Believing it to be an escape, he drags himself toward it and slips inside. However, once within the room, he senses another presence. When he turns around, he finds himself surrounded by countless corpses staring directly at him. The sight leaves him frozen in terror. Bong-soo enters the room behind him and explains, without emotion, that most humans live as harmless beings, while a small number prey upon others. Among these predators exists a hunter who takes responsibility for eliminating them. As he speaks, Bong-soo's eyes glow red, and his intent becomes clear. He steps forward, resolved to end No's life. Terrified, No attempts to resist, shielding himself while hurling desperate curses. Before Bong-soo can proceed, the door to the room is violently forced open. Police officers storm inside, surrounding Bong-soo with weapons drawn. The commanding officer moves forward and begins arresting him on charges including kidnapping, confinement, and murder. Bong-soo reacts with disbelief, questioning how his location was discovered. The officers respond aggressively, firing a warning shot and making it clear that their weapons are real. Bong-soo observes the impact point of the bullet before slowly looking back at them. The situation reminds him strongly of the virtual game he was just playing. Suddenly, he begins to laugh, confusing the officers. He then reveals the full extent of CEO No's crimes, exposing the murder of 6 women, the torture they endured, and the photographs taken before their deaths. The police are visibly shaken, while No begins to panic as his past is laid bare. Bong-soo gestures toward the corpses in the room, explaining that these lives were taken by No's own hands. He describes people like No as predators who exploit and destroy the innocent. He makes it clear that his actions were part of hunting such individuals. Finally, he points toward No and states that the one deserving punishment today is not himself, but the man standing before them. Hearing Bong-soo's words, CEO No falls into complete terror. One of the police officers, holding a gun while casually lighting a cigarette, makes it clear through his attitude that the only person he sees in front of him is a kidnapper and a murderer. This response ignites a surge of anger inside Bong-soo. He lifts his hammer, realizing that any attempt to make the authorities understand has failed. In that moment, he accepts that explanation has no meaning here. Acting on that realization, he swings the hammer down toward CEO No. The police respond instantly, opening fire as the strike lands. As the hammer connects with CEO No's face, bullets are fired at the same time. Bong-soo catches sight of one bullet rushing toward him. In his final conscious thought, he reflects that if he had been given even one more chance, he would have continued hunting and punishing such creatures without hesitation. Just like in the brutal virtual game, he longs for a place where judgment can be carried out freely and without restraint. The bullet strikes him, and his consciousness begins to fade. Memories flash rapidly through his mind before everything goes dark. After an unknown amount of time, Bong-soo's eyes snap open, and a scream escapes his throat. Regaining awareness, he is unable to comprehend why he is still alive. He clearly remembers being shot. A man stands in front of him, equally shocked, having believed Bong-soo to be dead. As Bong-soo tries to understand his surroundings, the man becomes furious at the sight of him breathing. He grabs Bong-soo by the collar and strikes him, clearly irritated by the effort it took to drag him here from market. After shoving him into a room, the man leaves, showing no further interest, as if his involvement is finished. Rage boils inside Bong-soo. A stone lies near his hand, and he reaches for it, attempting to stand and pursue the man. The stone slips from his grasp. His body betrays him. Violent coughing overtakes him, and his limbs feel impossibly weak. Walking becomes difficult, nearly impossible. Confused, he opens his clothes to examine himself. What he sees confirms something is terribly wrong. This is not his original body. The frame is emaciated, bones protruding beneath skin that shows no sign of strength. Scars cover his body, each one a record of pain and abuse. He looks outside. The moon hangs in the sky, and beyond it stretches a vast empire. As he studies the surroundings more carefully, recognition begins to form. This place resembles the Murim world he knows from games and stories. The realization slowly settles in, and his confusion turns into overwhelming emotion. Anxiety gives way to excitement. Tears stream down his face as laughter escapes him uncontrollably. His wish has been fulfilled, not through survival, but through death and rebirth. His consciousness has arrived in a world governed by strength. When his emotions finally stabilize, his expression twists into an unsettling smile. The scene shifts. Inside a stable, a boy named Sosam works mechanically, cleaning horse stalls. His hands move without thought, his body already accustomed to the filth and stench. The work is interrupted when a servant appears, visibly bothered by the smell. Without concern for the boy's condition, the servant signals that another task awaits. Sosam hesitates, knowing his current work is unfinished. The hesitation is met with violence. He is reminded of his place within the household. As an orphan surviving only on scraps from the Dan family, he has no right to question orders. Resistance is pointless. He is dragged to a blacksmith's workshop filled with rusted weapons and broken blades. An elderly blacksmith waits inside, along with a large, intimidating figure. The blacksmith surveys the workshop with fatigue. Only 2 people have arrived, and the pile of weapons makes the task difficult. Dongo dismisses the concern and treats Sam as labor, striking him hard and knocking him to the ground. Without waiting, Dongo leaves, abandoning him with the work. The blacksmith watches in silence, unable to interfere. Sam forces an oversized bundle of weapons onto his back. The sack is unstable, blades pressing through the fabric. He stumbles under the weight and collapses. The load falls beside him, leaving him motionless from exhaustion. The blacksmith approaches and notes his condition. Sam insists on continuing, but as he turns away, memories knot his own surface. Cold, loss, and prolonged suffering flood his thoughts. His strength fails again, and he collapses. Dongo returns and strikes him without hesitation. The kick sends Sam across the ground. Fragmented memories surface repeatedly, surviving a storm alone, begging at the Danri clan's gate, enduring constant abuse. His consciousness fades as the cold deepens. In the darkness, something changes. Later, Sam awakens in the stable, leaning against a wall. His body is weak, but his awareness is clear. Seeing his reflection in a water trough, recognition settles in. The name returns. Sam. The conclusion forms naturally. The original owner of the body died from the beating, and another consciousness has taken over. He stands alone in the dim stable, confirming the surroundings from memory. As the realization settles, a glowing blue interface appears before him. It matches the Murim online status window. Time passes. During the day, Mel moves through the clan grounds carrying feed, irritated by recent events. Frustration builds, and violent thoughts briefly surface before being dismissed as too risky. He heads to the stable instead. Inside, Sam sits slumped against the wall, bruised and bloodied beside a dropped food bowl. His eyes remain partially open, watching. 2 weeks have passed since awakening in this world. During that time, understanding has formed. The people speak Chinese, but this is not China. The land resembles ancient Asia, yet martial artists here move beyond normal human limits. They leap, train, and fight openly. Martial arts are real in this world. The system confirms it. The Murim online status window functions normally and is visible only to him. This is not a game. The people here are real, each with their own emotions and lives. He considers the question of what he is now. For the moment, the answer is unnecessary. Dongo appears at the doorway and approaches Sam. Sam slowly turns his head to face him. Dongo pauses, surprised by the lack of reaction. Sam calmly lifts his food bowl and drinks from it without acknowledging him. Dongo becomes irritated and attacks. Sam reacts instantly, catching the strike and crushing Dongo's fist. The change is immediate. So Sam continues the assault without hesitation. The confined room fills with violence until Dongo collapses and stops moving. So Sam stands amid the bloodstains and looks at his hands, noting the heat running through his body. The question of identity surfaces briefly and is dismissed. This world is real and follows a clear rule: survival through strength. There is no need to hide here. He sits down and turns his attention to the body. He activates the inventory. A blue space appears, different from the structured layout he remembers. It is a single open space. He reaches into it and confirms its size, then places his hand on the corpse. The body distorts and disappears, leaving only blood behind. He considers the usefulness of this ability and the possibility of further testing. The scene shifts forward. Daylight fills a large Murim-style compound. In a courtyard, two men talk, while So Sam sweeps nearby. He wears a simple mask and continues his work quietly. Their expressions show mockery as they notice him. When he pauses, one of them moves forward and strikes him. So Sam does not resist. He lowers his gaze, resumes his vacant behavior, and continues sweeping. The role remains intact. Matchel shoves Dong Bong Su forward and directs him toward the stable, then forces his head down against a post. Dong Bong Su maintains his weak act and offers no resistance. Matchel vents his frustration briefly, then leaves him to obey the order. Dong Bong Su leads the horse through the busy village streets, maintaining his frail appearance. The market is crowded, and the setting turns the task into a public display. As he walks, he notices children hiding nearby, waiting. They ambush him, throwing a stone that strikes his head. Blood runs down his temple, but he continues walking without reacting. The children laugh and follow, mocking him and throwing more stones. For a brief moment, his silhouette darkens and his presence shifts. The children freeze in fear. One of them breaks down, unsure of what he saw. The moment passes. Dong Bong Su resumes his harmless behavior, pats the horse, and walks on. The children recover and continue mocking him, though with less confidence. He endures it all without response, his steps steady. Back at the armory, Matchel complains to himself while cleaning, irritated by extra work and Dongo's absence. As he wonders where Dongo has gone, the armory door opens and Dong Bong Su steps out. Matchel looks inside and finds every weapon cleaned, polished, and neatly arranged. He is stunned. Dong Bong Su nods, maintaining his foolish expression. Matchel misinterprets the change as obedience. Dong Bong Su offers a small, heavy pouch. Matchel opens it and finds it filled with coins taken from Dongo's body. His confusion turns to satisfaction. Believing the money to be a tribute, he accepts it and leaves in high spirits. Dong Bong Su watches until he is gone. The harmless expression fades, and his gaze turns cold. As dusk falls, Matchel heads into town, pleased with his gain and unaware of the situation. He admires the weight of the pouch and decides how to spend it. He arrives at a high-class brothel and presents the money confidently. The owner recognizes him and hesitates briefly at the request, then accepts the payment and directs him upstairs. Matchel enters a private room, pours himself a drink, and waits. A voice announces itself from outside the door. A woman enters the room. Matchel's attention fixes on her immediately. Her appearance exceeds what he expected, and he gestures for her to come closer. She kneels beside the table and begins serving him. Matchel relaxes, fully distracted. The perspective shifts to a narrow crack in the wall. A single eye observes from the darkness, unmoving. Earlier, Matchel had climbed the steps of the Bungyang Inn and been directed to a room on the second floor. Downstairs, the owner examines the pouch of money Matchel left behind. Brief hesitation gives way to greed. Another figure enters. Dong Bong Su appears in the guise of the frail stable boy. The owner recognizes him and reacts with irritation, but stops when Dong Bong Su presents another heavy pouch. The owner accepts it immediately and directs him to a nearby room on the same floor. Dong Bong Su ascends the stairs calmly. Then owner watches him go, satisfied. Back in Matchel's room, Matchel is now stripped to the waist, his hands bound with cloth. He remains unaware of the danger. A presence moves behind him. A cloth tightens around his neck. Resistance follows briefly, then weakens. The struggle ends with a sharp motion. The body collapses. Dong Bong Su lifts the body and drops it to the floor. He watches until all movement stops. He sits beside the corpse for a moment, then begins clearing the room. His actions are controlled and methodical. He approaches the wall, separating the rooms, and locates the narrow crack used earlier. Turning back, he activates his ability. The body vanishes in a flash of blue light. He remains seated and examines the result. A familiar interface appears. The experience bar has increased slightly. The conclusion is clear. Killing grants experience, and accumulation leads to growth. He leans back, considering the implications. Strength increases through repetition. Efficiency follows power. Dong Bong Su lowers his hand and looks at the empty space where the body once lay, already focused on what comes next. Dong Bong Su briefly covers his face with his arms, then props Matchell's severed head into a small opening in the wall, leaving it displayed. The task finished, he moves away. Outside in the hallway, the owner waits impatiently. An entertainer named Inying approaches the room Dong Bong Su had rented and listens at the door before calling out. The owner grows irritated by the delay and orders her inside. She opens the door and steps into the dark room. The owner remains in the hall, growing uneasy as silence settles over the second floor. He glances toward Matchell's room and knocks, receiving no response. As irritation turns into suspicion, a scream erupts from the other room. He rushes inside and finds a body hanging from the ceiling. In the dim light and confusion, he fails to recognize Guok Dongo and instead calls out Matchell's name. The scene shifts to Anhui. The Huai River in the north and the Yangtze River in the center create a fertile plain where trade flourishes. Along with prosperity come bandits and unorthodox factions. In response, clans and sects rise to enforce order. Among them are the Namong clan and the Danri clan. Though smaller, the Danri clan maintains the Cross Heaven Sword Division and the Black Crow Squad, whose intelligence network surpasses even the beggar sect within Anhui. Recently, the Black Crow Squad has been dealing with a troubling case. Inside their headquarters, a subordinate presents a report to the squad leader, Gyo. Over the past few months, nearly 100 apparent suicides have occurred, far exceeding normal patterns. Every case appears flawless, leaving no trace of foul play. The perfection itself raises suspicion. Gyo asks for the first recorded case and learns it involved Matchell, an armory artisan of the Danri clan. The death occurred at an inn known as the Phoenix Tavern. Gyo decides to investigate personally. At the tavern, Gyo examines the room where Matchell was found hanging. He inspects the floor, walls, and ceiling. There is no sign of forced entry. The wooden wall shows no signs of removal, and the ceiling beams are fixed in place. No one could have entered unnoticed. The conclusion remains uncertain. Gyo asks whether anyone stayed in the adjacent room. The answer confirms another guest arrived around the same time. The name given is Sawsum of the Danri clan. The scene shifts to Dong Bong Su, now known as Sawsum, walking through a village while leading a horse. He reviews his status window, noting that the experience gained from killing a nearby man exceeded previous gains. He concludes that stronger targets yield more experience, but confronting a true martial artist now would be fatal. He decides to seek targets between ordinary civilians and trained warriors. A group of street thugs blocks his path and mocks him. Dong Bong Su remains silent. They strike him and drag him into a narrow alley. He evaluates the situation, considering whether to kill them and dispose of the bodies, then decides against it due to risk and low reward. He endures the beating. A man named Django appears and stops the assault. The thugs show immediate fear. Django examines the horse and reveals his intention to take it as a gift for his superior. Dong Bong Su understands that the plan was to kill him and seize the horse. Django presses him for a response. Dong Bong Su speaks clearly and challenges him directly. The thugs react in shock at hearing him speak. Dong Bong Su activates his inventory. Blue light erupts in the alley, forming a vortex. One thug is caught in the surge as Dong Bong Su draws a sword from the light. The horse is pulled into the inventory. Another burst of energy spreads outward, throwing the remaining thugs back. A system window appears, confirming Dong Bong Su's level has increased from 1 to 2. A red and black aura surrounds him. The thugs panic, recognizing the threat. Some attempt to flee, while others hesitate between running and attacking. Panic spreads through the gang as they realize what stands before them. They turn and flee through the shattered alley. One thug runs in confusion, unable to understand what he encountered. He stumbles and collapses. Psalm approaches, stomps him down, grabs him by the collar, and drags him away. Later, the thug regains consciousness and finds Psalm sitting in front of him. As Psalm steps closer, the thug's fear grows. Psalm presses a knife to his throat and demands information about the man who died earlier. The thug reveals his name was Django and that he belonged to the Black Snake Society. He explains that the Black Snake Society is part of the Ebony Syndicate that controls the back alleys of Bongyang, and that Django was an executive. He also reveals the leader's name, Bangpa, and admits that Bangpa ordered Django to kill Master Sum and take the horse. Psalm processes the information and understands the structure of the Ebony Syndicate and the Black Snake Society. He demands everything the thug knows, making it clear his survival depends on it. The thug cooperates fully. Moments later, the thug lies dead. Psalm opens his inventory and removes all the bodies, leaving no trace. He remains at the scene and reviews what he learned. The Ebony Syndicate becomes a clear target. These people exist between ordinary civilians and martial artists, fitting what he's been searching for. He notices that all wounds on his body have healed completely after leveling up. Every injury is gone. He considers that even fatal damage might be recoverable under certain conditions, making calculated risk acceptable when close to leveling. He reflects on the light that appeared during the level up and recognizes it as a danger. Both the glow and the inventory-based killings risk exposure. Remaining unnoticed is essential. A hunter must appear ordinary and blend in completely. Leveling must occur only after a hunt or in isolated places. Psalm stands beside his horse and reviews the encounter. If Django had been more cautious or stronger, the outcome could have been different. Pretending to be mute is no longer enough. He decides he must grow stronger quickly without being discovered. That resolve settles firmly. A system message appears, reporting a critical error in the Murim online system. It states the game can continue, but the warning remains unresolved. Psalm notes the error appeared after reaching level 2 and concludes it is likely caused by his existence interacting with the system. He checks his status window. Attributes previously marked as question marks now appear as gauge bars. He considers that this change may be tied to the error and that not everything can be fully quantified in reality. He reviews his skills. Common passive skills such as stab, block, and throw are listed. One skill stands out. Spirit Eye. It has no description, and its function remains unclear. At that moment, the system announced that the activation conditions for Spirit Eye had been met. The skill activated automatically when an enemy with a level difference of 10 or more entered a 20-meter range. The displayed distance continued to decrease. Psalm inferred that Spirit Eye functioned as an early warning. As the distance shortened, his attention shifted toward the gate. He judged the presence unlikely to be an enemy. Few would dare enter the Danri clan, and an intruder would not move this openly. The approaching individual was likely an expert from a clan. Psalm did not yet understand what a 10-level difference truly meant. Considering the effort and risk required just to reach level 2, the gap had to be significant. Reaching level 10 through ordinary people alone would require thousands, possibly tens of thousands, of deaths. That difference represented the weight of many lives. Someone of that level within the Danri clan was approaching. The door opened. A man entered, placed a hand on Psalm's shoulder, and asked whether he was the one who killed Mel. Psalm froze. Internal energy flowed from the man's hand into Psalm's body, circulating through him and inspecting him completely. When the inspection ended, the man withdrew his hand and left with his subordinates. Psalm remained silent. Outside, a subordinate asked why the man had left without interrogating the boy and whether he had been suspicious. The man confirmed his suspicion and explained that he had already checked by injecting internal energy. If Psalm had practiced martial arts, traces would have remained. There were none. Psalm was an ordinary person with no internal energy. As they walked away, the man considered whether the deaths were truly suicides. If it was a plague, he wondered how many more would die before it ended. On a night lit by an eerie moon, the suicide plague in Bayong abruptly stopped. In its place, killings began to spread through the city. Heavy rain followed. Inside a bar, several people drank together. One mentioned the story of a nameless swordsman. The other acknowledged that nearly everyone had heard it. The first insisted the figure should be called the Great Nameless Swordsman and said he was hunting members of the Ebony Syndicate. The second warned him to speak quietly. The first dismissed the concern and said the White Tiger Unit and Red Wolf Sect had already been wiped out. The second replied that one group remained and warned that the Black Snake Society would not tolerate such talk. The first said their turn would come and claimed the Nameless Swordsman would destroy them as well. Nearby, another man listened without reacting. He finished his drink, stood up, and left the bar in silence. The scene shifts outside the Black Crow Squad mansion. A security guard is asleep at the gate. His companion arrives and slaps him awake. The guard apologizes. His companion scolds him, warning him about the chaos caused by the Nameless Righteous Swordsman, stating that 3 black units have already been wiped out and that only the Black Society remains. He realizes the guard is falling asleep again. Before he can finish, the protagonist appears and cuts off the sleeping guard's head. The companion turns, freezes in fear, and begins to speak, but the protagonist strikes first and kills him in a single blow. The protagonist enters the mansion. Numerous arrows are fired at him by the soldiers. He narrowly dodges them and faces the soldiers. One soldier addresses him, stating he knew the Nameless One would come. The protagonist draws his sword. Thunder rumbles overhead. The commander orders the soldiers to kill him. The soldiers charge together. The protagonist cuts them down with his sword without pause. As the soldiers fall, fear spreads. The commander orders the remaining troops to move and advances himself, declaring he will kill the protagonist personally. The protagonist advances and kills the commander along with the soldiers around him. One soldier curses as he approaches, claiming he has caught the protagonist. The protagonist cuts him down as well. Another soldier rushes toward the protagonist and shouts for him to surrender. The protagonist commands the system. Inventory. A knife appears behind the soldier. He freezes in shock and questions how it appeared. Another soldier closes the distance and strikes the protagonist directly. After landing the hit, he laughs, claiming he finally succeeded and mocking the protagonist as nothing more than a human who can be killed. The protagonist drops to one knee and pulls the blade from his chest. The remaining soldiers hesitate, noticing his expression and questioning why he is smiling. The protagonist moves and cuts down the remaining soldiers. Elsewhere in the mansion, the squad leader's companion notices the sudden silence. He mutters that the screams have nearly stopped and questions whether one man is truly killing everyone. He recalls their past crimes and realizes that strength, not morality, determines survival. Sweating, he decides to act. He moves toward a hidden passage that leads to Paradise Manor, the leader's estate, and resolves to fight in the darkness. He orders his soldiers to fire. Arrows rain down, and several strike the protagonist. The companion hesitates, questioning whether the protagonist is dead. Before he can finish, the protagonist appears and kills one soldier instantly. The remaining soldiers are cut down just as quickly. Terrified, the companion calls out, asking if anyone is still alive. He draws his sword and confronts the protagonist, asking if he is the Nameless Righteous Swordsman and demanding to know what they did to deserve this. As the protagonist approaches, the man protests, claiming he is not the Grim Reaper and questioning his right to judge them. The protagonist cuts off his head before he can finish. Holding his sword steady, the protagonist states that he wants only one thing: their lives. He moves forward and declares that the only one left now is the Black Society leader, Bang Poem. While moving forward, the protagonist reflects. First was the White Tiger Unit. After leveling up by killing Django, he was still weaker than most members of the Black faction. He relied on luring, ambushing, and arson to begin his hunt. By the time the White Tiger Unit leader became alert, more than half of the unit had already been killed. During that period, officials and townspeople gave his actions a name: the Nameless Righteous Swordsman. After adopting this identity, eliminating members of the unorthodox faction became easier. When he killed the White Tiger Unit leader, he reached level 5 and obtained his first active skill, Qinggong, a body lightning technique, along with the 3 Forces sword art. With these, he could confront Black faction members directly. Around the time children began playing games imitating the Nameless Righteous Swordsman, the Red Wolf Gate was wiped out. The only unorthodox faction remaining in Banyang was the Black Society. The scene shifts to the residence of the Black Society leader. Outside the house, Black Society leader Bang Poem sits on the floor. The protagonist appears before him. After observing him, Bang Poem speaks, asking if he is the nameless righteous swordsman. The protagonist remains silent. Bang Poyam comments that if he were truly a swordsman of justice, he would not be so tightly wrapped. The protagonist replies that he is not one. Bang Poyam asks why he hunts and kills the unorthodox faction if that is the case. The protagonist answers that he is not a righteous swordsman. Bang Poyam laughs and says that he has deceived everyone. The protagonist steps closer and states that he deceived no one, and that people only believed what they wanted to believe. As Bang Poyam reaches for his sword, he remarks that the protagonist is interesting. Drawing his weapon, Bang Poyam says that even if he must cross the river of the dead today, he will have no regrets. Laughing, he charges and declares that regardless of titles, the protagonist came to kill him, and demands to see what he has. Both advance toward each other. Bang Poyam lands a direct strike on the protagonist. The protagonist counterattacks, but the strike is blocked. He attacks again, and Bang Poyam blocks and counters. As they exchange blows, Bang Poyam notices an opening and judges that it is too short and will not reach. The leader of the Black Society strikes again, hitting the protagonist directly and sending him flying backward. Before the protagonist can recover, the leader advances with a grin and speaks, noting that the protagonist's body is not in perfect condition. The leader attacks again. This time, the protagonist blocks. Another strike follows, and the protagonist blocks once more while realizing that the leader is deliberately targeting his injuries. He understands that continuing like this will lead to defeat, even if it requires sacrificing his body. As the exchange continues, the leader questions what the protagonist is thinking in the middle of the fight. The protagonist blocks another strike and loudly commands the activation of the Three Forces sword art. Before the skill can activate, the leader binds him with a rope-like sword and declares that he has caught him. The protagonist reacts in shock, realizing it is a whip sword. He struggles but cannot free himself. Observing him, the leader remarks that the technique was effective and notes that this is his first encounter with a whip. Before the leader can act further, the protagonist breaks free, reversing the momentum and sending the leader flying backward. The protagonist stands calmly and watches from a distance. Before he can recover fully, a large glowing snake-shaped construct appears in front of him. The protagonist reacts to its sudden manifestation. The leader rises and comments that the protagonist willingly used his own body as bait, stating that such behavior is not the way of a martial artist. As he advances, he calls it the way of an assassin or a hunter. Revealing his snake-like form, the leader explains that in a life-or-death duel, the one who hides more gains the advantage. He tears apart his clothing and declares that he had more hidden while the protagonist had less, calling a fatal flaw. The protagonist stands firmly, sword in hand. Advancing, the leader states that the protagonist has no moves left and orders him to die, calling him the nameless murderous demon. As he speaks, the glowing snake-shaped structure advances toward the protagonist with its jaws wide open. As the snake-like structure advances, the protagonist remains still for a moment. He then swings his blade powerfully, creating an air vortex that fills the area with dust and debris. As the dust spreads, Bang Poyam states that blocking his vision is useless. When the dust begins to settle, Bang Poyam spots a figure and immediately strikes with his snake whip, cutting it in two. As the dust clears, he realizes the body belongs to a Black Society member. It was a decoy. He looks upward and sees the protagonist above him. Midair, the protagonist activates the Three Forces sword art, second form, and descends with force. He lands a direct strike. Bang Poyam blocks with his hand, stopping the blade before it reaches his heart. The sword embeds into his palm, and he cries out in pain. The protagonist realizes Bang Poyam blocked the strike in an instant to protect a vital point. Bang Poyam, angered, declares the fight is not over and redirects the whip sword toward the protagonist. The protagonist attempts to withdraw his blade to counter, but Bang Poyam grips it tightly and refuses to release it. Before the whip sword lands, the protagonist opens his inventory. Numerous corpses fall out and act as a barrier. The whip slices through the bodies, cutting them apart as they fall. Wounded and exhausted, Bang Poyam notes that corpses appeared from nowhere to block his attack, indicating the protagonist still has hidden methods. Unable to locate him, Bang Poyam grows frustrated and swings his whip sword wildly, accusing him of using corpses in battle. An arrow suddenly flies toward him. He blocks it with his whip sword. Immediately after, another arrow pierces through Bang Poyam's head. As he is struck, he questions the situation and realizes he may have become the prey. At that moment, Bang Poyam notices another figure approaching. He becomes alert and calls out. He swings his whip sword and cuts the figure instantly. After the strike, he realizes the body belongs to one of his own men. The protagonist appears behind him and thrusts his sword through Bang Poyam's body. He drives the blade in fully and then pulls it out. Bang Poyam looks at his wound and speaks, acknowledging that every black society member in Banyang has been killed and questioning the reason. The protagonist replies that no reason is necessary. Humans have always killed other humans, from primitive times to civilization. The strong trample and take from the weak. He steps closer, places his sword at Bang Poyam's neck, and states that this time he was the strong one. With a swift motion, he kills him. The area falls silent. Lightning rumbles as the protagonist exits. He walks forward, wiping blood from his sword. He pauses and reflects that with the death of every black society member in Banyang, his preparations are complete. It is time to move to the next stage, where the strong are stronger and the prey is harder to hunt. He decides to go to Murim's Jianghu. The scene shifts to another region. Inside a grand mansion, an assembly of leaders is in progress. The leader asks how long remains until the Orthodox demonic war. An assembly member answers that 2 years remain. The leader repeats the timeline and states it is time to begin the grand plan. He calls for Gwangwon. Gwangwon steps forward, bows in response. The leader orders him to execute the first stratagem. Gwangwon accepts the command. The scene shifts to morning. The protagonist walks through the village market with his horse. At an outdoor restaurant, a man says to his companion that the nameless swordsman has wiped out the black society. His companion replies that merchants and courtesans are in uproar and that he never expected the black faction in Banyang to be completely cleared out. The first man suggests that he should now be called the Nameless Righteous Swordsman. A man in green clothing joins them and says he is not so sure about that. When asked why, he questions whether it is acceptable to kill people that way, even if he is a hero. The first man tells him to watch his mouth and reminds him of what the black society had done, saying they deserve to die. The man in green hesitates, but the companion adds that neither officials nor the Orthodox faction ever cared about commoners, and that only the nameless swordsman stepped up for them. The man in green agrees that without him, no one would have stood up for people like them. The first man stands and begins shouting praise for the nameless swordsman who drove the black faction out of Banyang. The others join in. Nearby people begin cheering as well. Within moments, the entire village is chanting his name. The protagonist walks away slowly and says that it is time for him to leave as well. By sunset, he arrives near the Danri clan residence and approaches the horse stable. A notification appears. An enemy with a level difference of 10 or more has approached within 20 meters. He realizes his spirit eye is pointing toward the stable. He opens the gate and enters. 2 figures are standing inside. As he approaches, he recognizes Black Crow unit leader, Gi Daehyo, and beside him, the head of the Danri clan, the flying heavenly demon sword, Danri Chanwo. The protagonist kneels and wonders why they are there. Danri Chanwo pats the horse's head and says it is time to say goodbye to it as well. Looking at his feet, the protagonist notices that Danri Chanwo is hovering slightly above the ground. Danri Chanwo states that on the coming full moon, the second daughter of the Namgung clan head is getting married. Gi Daehyo asks whether he is certain about sending his cherished horse as a congratulatory gift. Danri Chanwo says that if he could send one of his children to the Namgung clan, he would do even more than sending the horse. He mentions marriage ties and the 9 bows ceremony, repeating that sending one of his children would be better. It is easier to cross a stream with 2 logs rather than 1. Gi Daehyo replies that the Namgung clan might not want either of them. Danri Chanwo laughs and says that is why he called him. He does not care what methods are used. He places a hand on Gi Daehyo's shoulder and tells him to make it happen no matter what. Gi Daehyo becomes tense. Danri Chanwo removes his hand and orders him to depart immediately, saying he will have much to do tomorrow. Gi Daehyo bows and accepts. Danri Chanwo then points at the protagonist and instructs Gi Daehyo to take him along to the Namgung family, as he is needed to handle the horse. Gi Daehyo agrees and looks at the protagonist with confusion. The scene shifts to the next morning in front of the Danri clan residence. The protagonist waits near a shed with the horse. He reflects on how to learn proper martial arts instead of relying only on skills. He tried imitating the movements of family warriors and black unit leaders, but it was only imitation. Learning from a secret manual would be the worst option, and learning directly from a master the best. However, becoming someone's disciple at 18 is difficult. Despite that, he feels the situation has worked out well. While waiting near the soldiers, he considers the Namgung clan. As one of the 5 great clans with power in Anhui, there should be opportunities there, along with stronger prey. Gi Daehyo appears and observes the assembled unit. He confirms the Black Crow unit has finished assembling and asks who has not arrived. A soldier replies that everyone is present except the young master and young lady. Gi Daehyo grits his teeth. He remarks that Danri Ganghai is likely at a tavern in Bongyang, and Danri Hui dislikes traveling with subordinates and will follow later. He orders the unit to move out. The cavalry advances. Gi Daehyo stops outside a tavern and commands everyone to halt. A loud voice can be heard from inside. Gi Daehyo shows irritation and thinks about Danri Ganghai, the eldest son of Danri Chanwo. Though a martial arts prodigy with talent sufficient to enter the Namgung clan as an outer disciple, his character is problematic. He is frivolous and fond of alcohol and women, and rumors follow him. As Gi Daehyo approaches the tavern, the noise grows louder. He comments that Danri Ganghai is beating someone again. Suddenly, a man is thrown out through a wall and crashes into another wall. Gi Daehyo recognizes him and calls out to young Master Danri. A notification appears. An enemy with a level difference of 10 or more has approached within 20 meters. Ganghai lies on the ground and shouts at someone, threatening him. Another man advances toward him. Gi Daehyo stares at that man in shock. The protagonist recognizes him as a master of overwhelming skill. An old man appears, releasing intense green energy as he advances toward Ganghai. Gi Daehyo steps forward and tells him a halt. The old man turns and asks who he is. He strikes again, releasing a shockwave. Gi Daehyo identifies himself as the head of the Danri clan's Black Crow unit and states that the person being tormented is the young master of the Danri clan. He warns the old man to remove his foot or he will not stand idle. The soldiers draw their weapons. The protagonist observes that even the Black Crow unit leader does not recognize this man. Someone unknown to Gi Daehyo, who knows Anhui Murim thoroughly, must be an outside master of immeasurable strength. With the forces present, defeating him would be impossible. The old man looks at Gi Daehyo and the soldiers and thinks that they will not die, as a lion does not use full force to kill a bug. He responds casually, asking what the Danri clan is and whether it is something to eat. Gi Daehyo becomes angry and says he dares to insult the Danri clan. The old man replies that he truly does not know whether the Danri clan is something to eat or something to step on. Enraged, Gi Daehyo draws his sword and orders the Black Crow unit to save the young master. At his command, the soldiers charge. The old man remains calm. He raises his hand, forms a hand sign, condenses energy onto his finger, and releases a single strike. The attack hits the advancing unit. In an instant, the entire force is thrown into the air and crashes to the ground. The attack also strikes Gi Daehyo. As he falls, he realizes what it is, the soul-chasing flying butterfly. Half conscious on the ground, he begins to speak in disbelief. The old man approaches and remarks that for a country laborer, his eyes are not completely useless. He identifies himself as the soul-chasing poison hand, Tang Wu. The protagonist recognizes the name. Among the 20 strongest in Murim, the 2 gods, 3 monsters, 5 pinnacles, and 10 greats, Tang Wu stands as one of the 10 greats and the supreme master of the Sichuan Tang clan. Those who offend him cannot escape his poison even in death. If Danri Ganghai has offended someone of Tang Wu's stature, the consequences for the Danri clan could be severe. A girl in green approaches Tang Wu and calls him Grandpa. He responds. She suggests they leave, saying these are merely ignorant country people. Tang Wu's expression softens. He agrees and says this should be enough for the young master to understand how vast the world is. He slaps Ganghai once more, then tells Gi Daehyo that a descendant of the Orthodox faction causing trouble from mourning is disgraceful. Though he would normally take harsher action, he refrains. He instructs that when the young master wakes, he should be warned that continuing to harass women will shorten his lifespan. Gi Daehyo, still unable to move, thanks him for his mercy. Tang Wu withdraws the poisonous darts from his soldiers. The darts gather into his hand and vanish. He begins to call to his granddaughter to leave, but suddenly senses something unusual. His attention shifts to the fallen soldiers. He notices the protagonist among them and walks toward him, telling Hua to stay where she is. The protagonist wonders why Tang Wu is approaching him. Tang Wu stands before him silently and stares. Hua asks what is happening. Tang Wu replies that it is nothing special. He simply has something to ask the child. The protagonist is confused. Tang Wu asks his name. The protagonist remains silent. Tang Wu raises his voice and repeats the question. The protagonist remains silent. Tang Wu grows irritated and calls him a brat. Ji Daehyo steps in respectfully and explains that the boy is a horse handler and cannot speak. Tang Wu looks at the protagonist closely and asks if he is mute. He studies him carefully. The protagonist realizes Tang Wu is evaluating him, as if examining something valuable. If a master like Tang Wu sees worth in him, this is an opportunity to shed the identity of Sosum, the horse handler. Tang Wu suddenly grabs the protagonist's hand and examines the flow of energy in his body. He then begins laughing. He turns to Ji Daehyo and asks if they are heading to the Namgung clan. Ji Daehyo confirms it is for a marriage alliance. Tang Wu asks what the child does. Ji Daehyo explains that he manages the Fergana horse they are presenting as a gift. Tang Wu smiles and asks if he can take the child. Ji Daehyo is alarmed and says no, as no one else can control the horse. Tang Wu considers briefly and proposes that they transport the horse to the Namgung clan first. After arrival, he will take the child. He adds that he will speak to Namgung personally and, if necessary, write a letter to the Danri clan head along with payment. Ji Daehyo hesitates, then says they intended to present the boy along with the horse anyway, and agrees. Tang Wu laughs loudly and expresses satisfaction. He tells him to hurry and follow. Ji Daehyo shows visible irritation. He orders the soldiers to send the young master to a physician immediately and instructs the rest of the Black Crow unit to move out again. The protagonist remains uncertain. Ji Daehyo remains tense, while Tang Wu is pleased. They travel until nightfall and arrive at an inn. Ji Daehyo announces they will stay there for the night. The soldiers enter and begin their meal. Inside the stable, the protagonist sits on the ground and focuses inward. Since the battle with the Black Society, his control over the inventory has improved. He can now summon it within roughly a meter around him. With practice, the range may increase. Through it, he can retrieve swords or corpses and fire them outward, though the projection speed is not fast enough to threaten a master. He picks up a handful of sand and releases it, then opens the inventory. The sand disappears inside. He retrieves it again into his hand. He has become skilled at this. There's another method. Anything that enters his body can be transferred into the inventory. He places sand into his mouth and confirms it can be stored. He regards it as a divine art. He hears footsteps approaching the stable. Hua enters, questioning why her grandfather wants someone like him brought at this hour. She tells him to follow. They walk toward a room. Soldiers watch them pass. At the door, Hua announces their arrival and enters. Tang Wu sits on a wooden block inside. He tells them to sit cross-legged on the platform. Hua sits. The protagonist also sits. Tang Wu tells the protagonist to strip everything. He removes his clothes and sits again. Tang Wu observes his physique and says it is not bad. He brings out a box and calls it the Dragon Phoenix Golden Needles. Hua reacts, asking what he intends to do. Tang Wu sets the box down and explains the saying about oranges from Huainan becoming trifoliate oranges in Huaibei. If Huainan is the Danri clan and Huaibei is the Tang clan, then if the orange is Sosum, the trifoliate orange will be something else. He places his hand on the box and tells the protagonist he intends to perform a great ritual. It will be extremely painful, possibly unbearable, but if he survives, he will gain something greater and his muteness will be cured. Tang Wu opens the box. Light fills the room. He asks whether he will do it. The protagonist remains silent. Hua steps forward and objects, saying such a serious matter should not be decided without the elder's consent. She explains something to Tang Wu. He listens and laughs. After hearing her, he acknowledges her point. Tang Wu takes out a golden needle and asks the protagonist whether he is ready to receive the surname of the Tang clan. Tang Wu reflects inwardly. In Murim, many terms exist for those born with exceptional aptitude for martial arts, heavenly meridian body, while turning sacred emperor aspect, ninth grade sacred bone, heavenly martial heart meridian, cosmic sacred bone. These are rare talents said to appear once in decades, centuries, or even millennia. Those born with them leave marks on Murim's history. Yet the greatest aptitude of all is something he has found unexpectedly. Whether a talent appears once in 10, 100, or 1,000 years does not matter. This boy possesses a body never seen since Murim's beginning, a body with no meridians. At first glance, it seemed ordinary, simply untrained. But his body lacks the acupoints and pathways every human should have. Nothing exists as if he is not human. However, having no path means any path created becomes the path. If raised properly, he may be able to restore the 10,000 flower rain, a technique that has survived only in form for centuries. If that happens, the powers of Murim will bow before the Tang family. Holding the needle, Tang Wu thinks that the future of the Tang family lies in his hands. He points the needle at the protagonist and asks again whether he intends to accept the Tang surname. The protagonist nods. Tang Wu says that he has not yet fully become a member of the Tang family. He must go to the Tang clan and prove himself before the elders and the family head. He may die in the process. He asks if he will still proceed. The protagonist nods again. Tang Wu activates his power and moves closer, declaring that he will now perform the Great Reformation ritual. He instructs what to stand guard. While steps outside, multiple needles appear in the air under Tang Wu's control. With a gesture, he directs them toward the protagonist's body. Holding the golden needle, he announces that he will begin. He drives the needle into the top of the protagonist's head. The tip begins to glow green. Seated on the wooden block, the protagonist observes Tang Wu and Hua. They assume he cannot understand because they're using sound transmission, but he reads their lips. A skill he once used for hunting now serves him here. He considers the phrase body of no meridians. The status window and system visible only to him likely resulted in a body that is neither fully human nor character. Tang Wu cannot know this and has formed his own conclusion. In that case, he only needs to play along. After careful work, Tang Wu places needles across the protagonist's entire body. Standing back, Tang Wu examines him. The temporarily created acupoints show no blockage in qi and blood flow. His qi flows several times faster than that of an ordinary martial artist. However, caution is necessary. Tang Wu opens a box containing insects and selects a millipede-like creature with a needle. To prevent others from taking what he considers precious, he inserts the goo into the protagonist's ear as a precaution. He then methodically removes all the needles. By evening, the ritual is complete. Tang Wu tells him that from now on, he is no longer the Danri family's horse handler, but a member of the Tang clan, the greatest family in Sichuan. After a moment of thought, Tang Wu names him Tang Sam. The protagonist rises and responds with a smile, while waits outside in tension. The protagonist exits the room wearing new clothes and steps away from the others. Using his ability, he removes the millipede from his body. It appears in his hand. He crushes it immediately. He acknowledges that Sosum of the Danri family is gone. He is now Tang Sam of the Sichuan Tang family. Facing the sun with his arms open, he accepts this as his new beginning. The scene shifts to a grand mansion standing on a hill under the bright moonlight. Inside the mansion, sounds come from one of the rooms. A white-haired man and a woman are lying on a bed. They were enjoying their moment. After finishing their moment, the woman rests on the bed and slowly opens her eyes. She suddenly notices someone descending from above with a sword and reacts in shock. At the same moment, the white-haired man quickly jumps away from the bed and lands on the ground. The masked assassin lands and immediately kills the woman with his sword. The white-haired man stands up and looks at his clothes, noticing that blood has stained his expensive silk robe. He complains about the damage to his robe and angrily demands to know the assassin's identity. The assassin remains silent and points his sword toward him. He then swings his blade, releasing waves of black energy as he advances. The white-haired man draws his sword and blocks the attack, causing an energy clash. After the exchange, he comments that the assassin is weaker than expected. He then draws another sword using his magic and launches a stronger attack with both weapons. The assassin jumps backward and avoids the strike. The white-haired man continues pressing the attack and releases another powerful strike that pushes the assassin backward. In response, the assassin gathers black energy around his sword and counters. As their techniques collide, both attacks cancel each other out, although the assassin is pushed back slightly. After observing the technique, the white-haired man realizes that the assassin is using the ink light killing sword. He recognizes the attacker as Mad Cloud and asks if it has been 10 years since they last met. Mad Cloud corrects the time precisely. The white-haired man laughs and sits down on a chair, confirming that the assassin is indeed Mad Cloud because of his precise memory. He then asks why the 18th Cloud has personally come here. Mad Cloud explains that he has arrived to deliver orders and addresses the white-haired man by the name Ash Shadow. The white-haired man asks what the order is. Mad Cloud informs him that the order is the first stratagem. After hearing this, the white-haired man becomes tense and scratches the wooden table with his nails. He acknowledges that the plan is finally beginning and asks about Shifting Shadow. Mad Cloud explains that Shifting Shadow is currently connected to the Namgung clan and that the 15th of this month will be Shifting Shadow's wedding day. The white-haired man reacts with confusion upon hearing about the wedding and realizes that Shifting Shadow is involved in it. He then asks about the scope of the operation. While continuing to scratch the table with his nails, he states that everyone is to be eliminated except Shifting Shadow and Namgung High. He also mentions that the soul-chasing Poison Hand will soon arrive in Anhui and that their current forces in the region will not be sufficient. Mad Cloud responds that 5 shadows will be sent. The white-haired man accepts this and concludes that it should be enough. Mad Cloud states that he has delivered the orders and prepares to leave. Before he disappears, the white-haired man asks what Shifting Shadow's real name is. Mad Cloud ignores the question and vanishes using his technique. The white-haired man reacts with irritation and complains about Mad Cloud's personality. He mutters that he feels jealous, thinking about how shadows were expected to live alone. Yet one of them has even obtained the first beauty of Anhui as a bride while he remains in the same gloomy place. He leaves the room and flicks his finger. A servant immediately appears in response to the signal. He orders the servant to clean the room, remove the body on the bed, and kill all the guards who are on duty that day. The servant bows and acknowledges the order, addressing him as branch leader. The white-haired man then walks to the balcony and looks down at the city below. The mansion is revealed to be the Anhui branch of the heavenly demon divine cult. The white-haired man himself is identified as the branch leader known as the naked silver demon, Yahello. Standing on the balcony and looking toward the city, he reflects that the operation is finally beginning. Meanwhile, the protagonist, Tang Wu, and the soldiers continue traveling toward their destination. Tang Wu signals for the group to stop and notes that they have arrived sooner than expected. The protagonist looks toward the city ahead and recognizes it as Anhui, the place ruled by the Namgung clan. The scene shifts to the city. The sky is filled with fire lanterns, and the streets are lively with celebration. People cheer while performers entertain the crowds. The entire city is decorated, including a large mansion where the event is being held, and people throughout the streets are enjoying the festivities. At the entrance gate of the mansion, several poor people bow before a soldier and beg for a small portion of rice to share. The soldier becomes irritated and angrily tells them that they have no idea where they are and orders them to leave. One of the poor men asks if they could at least receive leftovers. The soldier responds by kicking the man hard, knocking him into the others. One of the poor men calls out to his fallen companion. At that moment, a voice from inside the mansion asks about the commotion. The gate opens, and a long brown-haired man steps out. The soldier quickly bows and explains that a group of beggars had gathered at the entrance. The brown-haired man looks at the soldier silently. From a distance, 2 people observe the scene. One of them identifies the man as Du Hyo-ok, the central figure of the banquet, while the other comments on his tall and handsome appearance. Du Hyo-ok approaches the man who was kicked and checks if he is all right. He offers his hand and helps the man stand. He then instructs the soldier to share food with the poor people, explaining that there should still be leftovers before the wedding begins. The soldier respectfully agrees. Du Hyo-ok then returns inside the mansion. The 2 observers continue discussing him. One remarks that he truly lives up to the reputation of a rising star, possessing both good character and strong martial ability, which explains why the Namgung clan's daughter chose him. The other adds that Du Hyo-ok once traveled to Jianghu alone and eventually defeated the Yin-Yang twin demons, 2 figures who had rampaged across the Jianghu for decades. They note that a wandering young warrior defeating those 2 demons and later becoming the Namgung clan's son-in-law is remarkable. As they continue talking, one of them begins mentioning rumors related to the martial arts of the Thunderblade Emperor, who was considered the greatest under heaven 300 years ago. At that moment, Tang Wu bumps into one of them. The man begins to protest, but is interrupted when Tang Wu responds sharply. The man immediately recognizes him as the soul-chasing Poison Hand, Tang Wu, and becomes frightened. Tang Wu grabs the man by the head and slams him to the ground. He then walks away, telling him to move aside and calling them useless. Tang Wu and the others continue toward the mansion. Inside the mansion, Du Hyo-ok is welcoming an elderly guest when he notices movement near the gate. As Tang Wu arrives at the entrance, he loudly demands silence. The surrounding people gather around him while he states that if anyone has something to say, they should speak directly rather than whispering behind his back. Du Hyo-ok steps outside and asks Tang Wu to calm down. He bows respectfully and introduces himself as Du Hyo-ok. Tang Wu acknowledges that he is the young man who caused him to come all this way. He remarks that meeting him earlier would have been preferable and states that seeing him now is disappointing. Du Hyo-ok reacts with confusion and asks Tang Wu what he means. Tang Wu ignores the question and, while walking inside the mansion, asks if Bayok is present. Du Hyo-ok explains that the clan head is waiting inside and hurriedly offers to guide Tang Wu to the king's hall, running after him. The protagonist watches Du Hyo-ok with confusion. As he focuses on him, the system informs him that an enemy with a level difference greater than 10 has entered within 20 meters. After receiving the notice, the protagonist observes Du Hyo-ok carefully. He notes a subtle gap between him and Tang Wu and notices that Du Hyo-ok continues walking at a steady pace without stopping. From this, he concludes that the newly detected high-level presence must be Du Hyo-ok. He studies Du Hyo-ok's body further. Normally, every human has some left-right asymmetry in features such as the face, limb length, or shoulder height. However, Du Hyo-ok appears completely balanced, almost perfectly symmetrical. The protagonist interprets this as someone of the same species as himself, a predator hiding beneath a human appearance. The scene shifts to the area outside the Namgung clan's King's Hall. Du Hyo-ok leads them toward a large building with several swords embedded along the top. When Tang Wu sees the swords belonging to past clan heads, he criticizes the arrogance of calling themselves kings and remarks that in the end they will lie in graves like everyone else. Du Hyo-ok asks Tang Wu to wait outside for a moment, so he can go in and announce their arrival. Tang Wu refuses and walks up the stairs directly, pointing out that the clan head was already said to be waiting. He pushes open the doors and enters. Inside, an older man is speaking with a yellow-haired woman. When the man sees Tang Wu, he reacts with surprise and greets him as his uncle. He approaches and welcomes him, saying it has been a long time. Tang Wu responds by criticizing the undignified behavior of a clan head running around, but admits it is good to see him again. The man laughs and remarks that Tang Wu has not changed. From a distance, Tang Wu observes them and wonders if her grandfather and the clan head were always that close. The yellow-haired woman notices Tang Wu and approaches her, greeting her warmly. Tang Wu replies that she seems to have become even prettier. The woman thanks her and asks if she's been well. Du Hyo-ok coughs to draw attention and explains that earlier he was too flustered to introduce himself properly, stating that his name is Du Hyo-ok. Tang Wu introduces herself as Tang Wu and jokingly asks if she may call him brother-in-law. Namgung Hai becomes embarrassed while Du Hyo-ok laughs and says that the title sounds fine. Tang Wu remarks that she never expected someone shy like Hai to get married before her. Hai becomes more embarrassed by the teasing. Hai then looks toward the protagonist and asks who he is. Tang Wu begins to explain, but the protagonist steps forward first and introduces himself as Tang Sam. Du Hyo-ok greets him and offers his hand. The protagonist pauses for a moment with caution before shaking his hand and smiling. Du Hyo-ok then mentions that he plans to go to Soho Lake that night with Hai and suggests that they all go together, including Tang Sam. The scene shifts to the shores of Soho Lake. The lake is illuminated by many small lamps floating across the water. From a ship on the lake, the group watches the scenery with interest. Tang Wu looks at the view and expresses excitement at how beautiful it is. Du Hyo-ok explains that the lake is well known for its scenery and that the night view is especially famous. Namgung Hai also admires the sight of the moon reflected across the lake. While the two women continue talking, Du Hyo-ok approaches Tang Sam and suggests that since the ladies are chatting, the men should have a drink. He says he will bring some liquor and leaves. Tang Sam watches him from behind and thinks about Du Hyo-ok. On the surface, he is the man who will soon become the Namgung clan's son-in-law, but to Tang Sam it is clear that Du Hyo-ok is hiding something. He considers him a predator, concealing his true nature, and suspects that someone of that level must be planning something significant. He feels that he has stepped into a larger hidden scheme. At that moment, The system informs him that an enemy with a level difference of 10 or more has entered within 20 meters. Tang Sam looks toward the entrance of the ship with confusion and begins observing the surroundings carefully. He concludes that the detected enemy is not Do Hyo-ok. Since the ship is only about 25 meters long and 5 meters high, the only possible location is the deck below. Do Hyo-ok soon returns carrying liquor and explains that it took him a little longer because the drink was stored in an unusual place. Tang Sam realizes that a new enemy other than Do Hyo-ok has appeared. Do Hyo-ok presents a rare drink called Golden Bud Liquor and offers it specifically to Tang Sam. Tang Sam pauses briefly, then politely says he is not feeling well and asks if he can walk around the ship for a moment. Do Hyo-ok agrees and tells him that if he asks the boatman, he can go wherever he wants on the ship. Tang Sam begins walking around the ship. As he moves, the system continues notifying him that an enemy with a level difference of 10 or more is within 20 meters, with a measured distance decreasing from 14 meters down toward 11. Tang Sam thinks that the distance to the enemy should be increasing as he walks away, but instead the distance begins to decrease. The system continues updating the distance as it drops from 6 meters to 3, then down to 1. Tang Sam realizes that this means there are now 2 enemies of that level nearby. Another notification appears, again counting down the distance from 4 meters to 1. From these repeated detections, Tang Sam concludes that including Do Hyo-ok, there are 5 enemies with a level difference of 10 or more on the ship. He then moves to the outside railing of the ship and quietly observes the lake while thinking about the situation. If their goal had been to kidnap Namgung Hai, they would have already acted. The fact that they have not taken action yet means something else must be happening. Looking toward the large buildings of the city, the protagonist considers the situation again. From what he has observed, there is a high possibility that the real target is not Namgung Hai, but the Namgung clan itself. Every one of the enemies detected has a level difference of at least 10 compared to him. Their true level could be 20 or even 30. If 4 people of that level are planning to invade the Namgung clan, it could lead to the clan's downfall. He realizes he is caught between 2 sides. Tang Wu stands with the Namgung clan, while the enemies preparing the attack are already ahead of him. Thinking about the situation, he remarks to himself that he is truly stuck between 2 opposing forces. With the ship approaching its destination, he decides he has to move before they arrive. The scene then shifts to several ships moving toward the Namgung clan city. Inside the city, a group of soldiers approaches a building. When they reach the entrance, one of the soldiers questions their leader, squad leader Gozangong, asking whether it is really necessary to keep checking everything along the way, suggesting that it feels excessive. The squad leader immediately reacts with anger, accusing the soldier of disobeying orders and asking if it is difficult to simply follow instructions and inspect every location. He grabs the soldier by the head. The soldier quickly tries to explain that he only meant it seemed like a waste of time. The leader responds that with the wedding approaching, it is natural to inspect the area repeatedly to ensure security. He then throws the soldier aside and orders him to stop complaining. Another soldier tells the complaining one to stop whining and hand over the lantern, asking if it is his first day. The 2 soldiers then proceed into the building. Watching them go, the squad leader complains to himself that the task is tedious. He remarks that a man should be cutting off enemy heads while singing, not wasting time on inspections, and says that if an enemy appeared, at least he would not be this bored. Inside the underground tunnel, the 2 soldiers walk forward with a candle lighting the way. One of them complains that everyone else is drinking while they are stuck doing this job, and asks the rookie what he thinks. At that moment, the protagonist suddenly appears and blows out the candle. The tunnel immediately becomes dark. One of the soldiers panics and shouts that there is an enemy. The protagonist instantly attacks, killing one soldier with his sword. The other soldier becomes terrified and tries to escape, but the protagonist quickly kills him as well. Outside the tunnel, the squad leader waits and begins to yawn. He wonders why the soldiers are taking so long and suspects they might be slacking off. He picks up a wooden torch and decides to enter the tunnel himself, saying he will deal with them when he finds them. As he walks deeper inside, he suddenly notices a severed human arm on the ground. Shocked, he realizes what it is and begins to panic. He calls out for the soldiers, shouting the names of the rookie and Dachel. Continuing deeper into the tunnel, he finally sees the scene ahead and becomes completely terrified. The protagonist is arranging the severed body parts of the soldiers he killed, placing them on spears while examining the pieces and searching for a missing arm. The squad leader carefully looks at the bodies and begins trembling in fear. The protagonist hears his voice, turns toward him, and calmly tells him that the missing arm has arrived.